Nice to see you. You're the first to arrive.
Hello.
I apologize for the problem. I got the music on for a second. A little bit of Lee Perry recently passed. I apologize for the problem with the timing on that article I wrote.
Oh, it's okay. It was just basically the first one that came out, and
Right?
but it was fine. It wasn't a problem.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. So how's everything going with popularizing and distribution and all the rest of it?
Well, we're doing the festival circuit right now, so we're going to Mammoth Lakes in California, and so that's next weekend. This weekend it's Tallahassee, and then we have Austin and Memphis, Indie Memphis, and the Austin Film Festival happening in like October 20th, around that time.
All right, that'll be a fun road trip.
Yeah, it will be.
So I wonder if it's okay to talk about our mutual friend, or if he would rather not have his name mentioned.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with talking about him.
Well, he sure is an interesting fella. Let's talk about him and try to preserve the anonymity if possible. And if it slips, it slips. Um, I didn't ever really know about Larry Flynt beyond just that he's this pornographer who got into politics and has become accepted into the political crowd. I didn't pay attention to his details, but I remember hearing about the run for president when I lived in St. Louis. It was just a brief little sensation in the St. Louis newspaper, and I had forgotten all about it. And when I got in touch with our friend, he clued me into this whole like ecosystem that was going on surrounding Larry Flynt during that period and before and after. Fascinating stuff. I suppose Mr. Flynt passed away in February of, was it this year or last year?
It was this year. Yeah,
This year,
2021.
wow. Well, he was really an important freedom fighter.
Oh, I mean, on multiple levels, but the Supreme Court case, Falwell versus Hustler, is one of the two most important First Amendment decisions of the 20th century. And right now, Times versus Sullivan is starting to be attacked by Kavanaugh and other conservative Supreme Court justices. And they're hoping to bring it to the floor.
Sorry, Nadia, we just had another couple of guests arrive. This is Neeli Cherkovski. Are you familiar with this name? He's a poet. He's a very talented poet.
Hi. Can you see me?
Usually associated with Charles Bukowski,
Yeah.
but he's nothing like that writer. He writes his own kind of thing. And here's Mark SaFranko. Looks like he's mute.
There I am. I don't see me. Oh, no wonder. There we are.
There's Neeli.
Up. Yes.
Neeli, let me introduce you to Nadia. Is it Szold?
Szold.
Nadia Szold. She's a director. She's recently directed a film about Larry Flynt's run for president in 1983.
Wow. Right.
And we've got Mark SaFranko. He's, I don't know if I'm supposed to do something. Let me hit this button and see if it helps. No, I didn't do anything, but he's logging on. He's an excellent writer of prose. Are you familiar with SaFranko, Neeli?
I'm barely familiar with myself, so it's hard.
I know what it's like. So there he is. There's
there it is. Okay.
My favorite prose author in America today. And you probably know who Neeli Cherkovski is.
Yes, I'm having an audio issue. I wonder what
All right.
Okay.
I so dark. Let's see. There we are. No,
not my volume.
Oh, well.
Wonder what.
Oh, Put the light on up above. That would help. Let's see.
While you're doing that, I guess we're gathered here today to talk about DIY or bust. Any efforts we've all made at self-starting with creativity. I don't know if you can hear me, Mark.
I can hear you. I'm
Okay.
trying to come through my phones, but it's not work. It's very strange. It's not working.
There you
Okay, well, okay, I can hear you.
All right. Well, my sound's a lot better than it was the last time we connected over one of these
Okay.
things. Nadia, I guess we were in the middle of talking about your film. Why don't you introduce how you went about putting that together? That was a little bit of a self-starting operation in itself, wasn't it?
Viewing my uncle, just as a family oral history. I wanted to get the story on his relationship with Leonard Cohen when he was Leonard Cohen's producer, and his relationship with Leonard Cohen's accountant. He had a kid with her, and this woman stealing all of Leonard Cohen's money, selling all his royalties, and then basically spent it on Mac, and then was protected by the Naropa Institute
go.
up in your neck.
Wow.
And so she was a con artist from the beginning, and I was getting those stories, and it was really interesting. But then he had to talk about when he was Larry Flint's videographer during Larry Flint's campaign for president, and so he told me some wild stories about it, and I was hooked. So I asked him what happened to the tapes, and nothing had. They'd been sitting in a storage facility. And I think a couple other directors were interested at different times, but Larry, he wasn't interested in them, and he never gave them access to him or his own archive. And so nothing ever happened with the project. So I first digitized all the tapes, watched them, saw that there was a story that definitely hadn't been told before. And then I arranged a meeting with Larry Flint, and we talked for 2 hours over lunch. And he then at the end of it said he'd be happy to be interviewed and be happy to, basically give me the keys to his archive. So
That's
I
great.
started ransacking his archive, and then through connections through just piecing together the story, meeting other reporters and journalists who were there at the time, who had their own photos and stories. So it was, putting this puzzle together in a very DIY fashion, because a lot of that work had to happen before any kind of financing. So before any financing, there's like a huge amount of work, and then also after too. So I really never gave Larry Flint much thought before hearing the story from my uncle Steve Lindsay, and then just getting to know all the characters who were around him at the time, like Paul Krasner and Terry Southern and Zappa. So Paul Krasner was actually my first interview subject, and
Me too.
that's cool.
Fine, man.
Yeah, I went out to I went out to his house in Desert Hot Springs,
Oh, wow.
and I was on mushrooms when I interviewed him. But it was a good interview, and it was not used in the film, unfortunately, because he really wasn't there during the run. But he did have great things to say about satire and Lenny Bruce and Larry. So it was
So he was
well worth it.
the editor of Hustler while Flint was in the medical center, right?
Well, he was actually made editor of Hustler when Larry was undergoing his born again phase.
Oh, okay.
So Larry basically said that he had a vision on an airplane on his private jet, which is painted pink and called God Force One. He had this vision where Lenny Bruce came down to him and basically said that he should, give the reins to Paul Krasner. And so he did, because he said that he wanted to evangelize. And his wife Althea was like, "You're crazy." So Paul Krasner did, he for like 6 months he was the publisher. No, he was the editor, and also he was made publisher, actually, which is crazy.
I think I remember hearing that.
Yeah. So and then after that, after Larry was shot, it went back to the family, and Althea actually became in charge, and until Larry underwent the surgery that then took him out of pain and effectively launched his campaign his campaign as challenger to Ronald Reagan.
Right. Wow, well, it's a really fascinating story. Everyone should see that film.
Oh, yeah, that sounds great.
Keep your eyes out for it. And
Where is everybody? Where are you, Neeli?
Oh, where am I? I'm in San Francisco on Bernal Hill, which is at the south end of the city. And I'm on the south slope, and we have a street down below me called Cortlandt Avenue, and I can hobble down there and go to cafes and restaurants. It's very nice. Yeah, very good. I'm an old North Beacher. That's the old Bohemian quarter. But
Right.
I moved here, I trekked here in 84. Yeah, so 1984.
Very cool. Yeah, well, I'll let you know if we have a screening of some kind in San Francisco.
that's great.
Oh, absolutely.
And Mark, you've just written a book of poetry. I talked about you being a prose writer, but you've written a book of poems called I Don't Believe You. That's your latest production, right?
Yeah, that's some selected stuff from over the past 25 years, I guess.
Right.
But just before, I wanted to ask Nadia something because the audio feed kept breaking up. Were you talking about Kelly Lynch at the beginning?
Yes, I was. Mhm.
I missed all of that, and I was interested in hearing. I don't want to make you repeat it, but I'm curious about that because you don't see much about her. Just a passing mention of her name.
Yeah. I mean, I read some emails, and I think that she was crazy.
Where is she? Where is she?
Well, I don't know where she is right now. I think she might be homeless, but for a while she was at the Naropa Institute, and because she's a Buddhist and she's very convincing, she was protected by them for a while.
Right.
But I mean, she got the gig as Leonard's accountant because she was an assistant to his accountant. His accountant is this guy Marty, and then when he died, she broke into his office, took all the files, and then took them to Leonard and said, Marty's been shorting you, and and then he's like, well, she's honest. I'll give her the keys. So yeah, and they were lovers for a time.
Okay.
And I asked Steve about this, and it's possible that Leonard wrote 1,000 Kisses Deep about her. And she and if you listen to the lyrics, it is kind of it's intriguing. But basically he introduced Steve to her, and then they got involved and had a kid.
Okay, so what was because the audio is breaking up, what was the connection between Kelly Lynch and Larry Flint? Was there one, or was that just there was none? Okay. No. I was just trying to, I was having trouble following the.
Yeah, I was just talking to my uncle about his colorful life, and he mentioned then the time when he was the producer for this documentary on Larry's campaign.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
So, yeah, it is, I think that she's an interesting person. I mean, I know that she's, was stalking Leonard
Right. Right.
pretty intensely. And he had to put a restraining order on her. But it's sad.
Yeah.
It's a really sad story, I think.
Yeah. I would always just see her name. I'm a longtime Leonard Cohen fan, and I would just see her name from time to time, and he would just mention in passing that she stole all of his money, basically. And but there was never more about her that appeared anywhere that I could find, and that's why it sort of caught my ear.
Yeah, I think that she's from Pennsylvania, I think, and like maybe around Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
Lost her virginity to a priest.
I've lost you completely now.
Oh.
Oh,
Well, yeah, it's not my expertise, so.
Yeah. I just got a sign here that said my internet connection is unstable. So that's probably what the issue is. And I don't know why that is, but
So where are you at, Mark? Where are you from?
I'm just outside of New York City, out of Manhattan, a few miles outside of Manhattan in New Jersey.
Cool.
And yeah.
Cool.
Did I send you a copy of this yet, Mark?
I don't. Can you hold it up higher? No, no, I did not. I have not seen it. No.
How
No, I
about
don't.
you, Neeli? I think I owe you each a copy of this.
Oh, okay. What's in it? I don't remember.
You sent me a poem,
Oh, okay.
and Neeli sent me a few poems,
Okay.
and it's a nice production.
It looks nice. Yeah.
We're illustrated and everything.
Yeah. Now I vaguely remember that. Okay.
Well,
Yeah, that
thanks
would be great.
for
It would be great to get.
contributing.
Yeah, it would be great
This
to get a
is
hold of.
sort of a DIY failure because it's full color and it's so nice that it has to be like really expensive. It's hard to get consigned.
Right.
for it, but I'm proud of it. It's nice.
Yeah, looks good. Yeah, I would love to get a copy of it. Yeah.
You deserve one for sure, and so do you, Neil. So DIY or bust, it's a hard thing. I'm right up against it right now. I've been applying for all these grants and I'm trying to get funding for a film that I'd like to make about the Beat Generation in Denver. I saw this thing about crowdsourcing the truth somebody was doing about the Son of Sam case. And I thought, oh, there's got to be so many stories in Denver of just incidental players in that.
You're
In that myth, in that history. So I'm going to put out a bulletin and try to get all that. And I've already got a lot of big names on my side for this. So that's my latest scheme. And it's just become like more urgent and important in the last couple of weeks. I'm in part of a manifesting abundance group. And at the last one, I kind of had a meltdown because it's really kind of do or die for me, and everyone else is just sort of enhancing their happiness. Nothing against those people. Happiness is a great thing, and I love the group leader. I love the group members. Everything's fine, but I just had this kind of panic attack last time and realized, my God, you've got to do something for yourself, And I mean, I'm not opposed to the metaphysical outlook by any means. It is my native outlook, but then there's this world that demands products and activity and effort, and it just doesn't always jibe too smoothly.
Definitely not. Yeah.
And that's why I thought, well, I'll just call the podcast DIY or Bust, because that's the mood I'm in. I don't have like any wisdom to impart other than to just say, well, I'm in that moil, I'm doing it.
Well, there is no, I mean, everything is a matter of chance and luck. The way I mean, you work, you hope for the best, and the rest is, it's impossible to predict, I think, and
I know what you mean.
Nothing ever makes any sense. That's another part of it. So.
But then there's this thing about alignment. I believe in that too, but it's not from the same school as like jobs and work and board, all that. But you have to somehow synthesize your outlook with your activity. I don't know.
Right.
That's been my trip lately.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not feeling hopeless. I mean, I came up against this like feeling of desperation, and the next thing that happened is somebody wrote back saying, "We'd love to see your writing. We're a local magazine. We pay $50 per prose and 25 per poem submission." So it's like the life is always kind of there for you, and it's never really hopeless. But I did go
Right.
into that. I did go into that feeling the last couple days. I suppose it's good to soak in time to time, but you don't want to get stuck there.
Yeah. I've found personally myself the past couple of years. I mean, I don't know if it's coincidental, but this pandemic situation has really just kind of, it's made everything very different and very odd, I think.
I know what you mean, and I kind of like that, but then it has a dark side too, or a downside.
Totally. Yeah.
I feel that with DIY or bust, I think you'd have to kind of go out of your comfort zone and call people and connect, just connect.
Yeah.
And then you don't know what they're going to say or how they're going to respond to, what you're after, like what you're trying to make happen.
I'm so privatized in my
That's
little
been my experience. Like
apartment
you just
here
have to
that
do it.
I'm not sure who to talk to. I've been sending out all these requests to venture capitalists, well-worded synopsis of my aims and ideals, and who knows if it'll matter at all. It makes me feel good to be doing that, but I'm starting to think like, well, that's just the first part. I mean, I feel like I'm on the track of doing exactly what you're talking about, reaching out and making connections and daring, kind of making DIY a dare. But I don't know. I mean, life's been good to me so far. I'm not homeless or anything, and I've got all these attributes and products, and they're not really moving or rewarding me as they will in a little while. But it's not like I have a whole lot to complain about. I just kind of went through that pendulum the last few days.
Well, I think there's a lot to complain about always.
Well, that's true.
Really,
That's true.
there's always a lot to complain about when it comes to like artistic endeavors. It's tough out there.
It is, but I guess what I'm talking about is not wanting to stay in that feeling.
Right,
I mean, you
right. No,
can
I
acknowledge
understand.
it and be
Yeah.
like, all right, that's not invalid, but you don't want to like get there and
No,
really
of course. Yeah.
not to say it doesn't exist. I guess that's just kind of that's the tennis game I'm playing lately.
Sure. No, I mean, you have to cast a net out to as many corners, I guess, as possible, doing what you're attempting to do. I mean, what else can you do unless you have the money to finance everything yourself, right? I mean, you've just got to cast the nets out and hope for the best, right? I mean, what
That's
else
it.
can you do? I mean,
I bought a cheap camcorder, and that felt like, okay, I can afford this cheap camcorder. I'll buy this, and now I can like do something with it. I haven't done anything with it, but that was the genesis of the beat idea, the beat
Right.
film idea.
And you've written a book about beats in Denver,
Yeah,
right?
I wrote a book about the beat generation in Denver in 2015. It's my biggest seller. And I really would rather write fiction, but that's the biggest seller. So that's what I'm going to for like, okay, that was a good luck moment. Maybe I can use that good luck and like extrapolate into more good luck. We'll see what happens. I mean, it'll probably work.
And
but
you're in Denver or Boulder?
I'm in Denver.
Yeah. in like my research, I was talking to Terry Southern's son, Niall
right.
Southern, and I think he's in Boulder, but
Currently in Boulder. I've always wanted to meet that guy.
yeah, I think I know he's been trying to make a documentary about his dad. I hope
Huh.
it's happening. But he was also doing that, applying to grants and just going through all the archives. Yeah, I think I have actually, yeah, I think this is my favorite of Terry
Oh,
Southern.
me too. That's a good one.
Oh, it's so good.
Thinly veiled Kubrick, I think.
Oh yeah, he wanted Kubrick to direct it,
Oh,
and but Kubrick, having just done Strangelove, didn't want to do another satire.
too
He
much-
wanted
too
to
much
completely
Terry
pivot.
Southern.
Yeah.
That's a good book, though. I remember when I read that, I thought, oh, now I understand why he was so close to Burroughs, because he did that similar kind of experimentation with writing to Burroughs, but he never really lost his Terry Southern self.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it would be an incredible film. It was going to be made into a film, and Mike Nichols was going to be the director,
Oh,
but
wow.
Ringo Starr's lawyer fucked up the deal by being too tight-fisted with the rights, because he had bought the rights to it, and Mike Nichols felt justifiably that in order for these big stars like the Fondas and like Julie Christie to get naked and like, really like play the movie to the hilt, they would have to be given points. But Ringo Starr's lawyer just botched that. But I think, yeah, they had even like secured like, I think it was like $17 million budget back in like the early 70s, and it was going to go ahead, but came crashing down.
Neely and Mark, do you have anything to say about Terry Southern? I just thought of something, but I don't want to hog the mic.
No, you guys go ahead.
So speaking of Terry Southern, the Magic Christian, speaking of Ringo Starr is what reminded me of it. The Magic Christian, Nadia and I have this mutual friend who may or may not want to be named, and he worked for Larry Flint, and he was drawing a parallel between the Guy Grand character in Magic Christian, who's always paying people to do ridiculous, embarrassing, like humiliating things just to show the power of the money, and Larry Flint. And I don't think that was an accident, but I don't think it was actually written about or for Larry Flint by Terry Southern, just kind of one of those coincidences. And yeah, you just reminded me of the Magic Christian, Nadia. So
The Magic Christian, yeah, I think that's a very apt parallel to Larry Flint. And just in the sense of offering money for people who would reveal various hypocrites in Congress, and then also just his like trickster kind of spirit, and him being fine with just like, yeah, dangling in front and throwing it away. So yeah, there's definitely a parallel. And I think that Terry Southern, I don't know if Larry had ever read The Magic Christian. I think Terry Southern came into Larry's orbit through Dennis Hopper, because Dennis Hopper was hired by Althea Flint to write the Doors film. And because like Larry and Althea were obsessed with Jim Morrison and would actually hold like seances to speak to Jim's ghost.
Wow.
And I think like Althea was kind of in love with Jim Morrison, but that's how actually Larry got in touch with our mutual friend Zack, because they wanted to make this film about the Doors. And so then
on the way to the Jim Morrison movie.
Yeah, so the connection with our friend to the Morrison family, and then so I think that she hired Dennis Hopper to write it, but he wasn't going to write much. So he brought on Terry Southern, who who wrote Easy Rider.
Right.
And I don't think much writing was going on at the Flint Mansion.
Probably not.
Those two guys. Yeah.
Wow.
But
So, oh,
no, I want to hear more about it. I want to hear more from our poets.
yeah, me too. What's the news?
Is that
Who's got
me?
news? Neely.
Is that me you're talking to?
Yeah, I noticed you've got a book about Cherkovski in conversation with Clark Coolidge. Is that your latest book?
Well, that was one of them, Coolidge and Cherkovski. It was reviewed in Rain Taxi. Coolidge is 7 years older than me, but I always thought he was 40 years older than me because he was very well known in this, he's loved by the language poets. And, but at the same time, he was at Naropa teaching, and he's very erudite. He has the largest private library I've ever seen. I went up to his place in Petaluma and he said, I'll show you the library. It's in the basement. And I thought, poor Clark, he has a little library. And we go in there, it's the size of a pretty good sized county library. And I mean, everything's there. And for a poet, it's a feast. And he's published about 70 books. He's the tops. So I met Clark and we did a reading together, and I suggested we do a conversation. And so Kyle Harvey, who's a great poet and book designer of my publisher, Lithic Press in Colorado, he was out here, he filmed us, and we made a book out of it. And it's done pretty well. And it has a essay he did at a lecture he did at Naropa. And it has a thing of mine called Random Poetics. But I had a book out recently called Hang On to the Yangtze River.
Yeah, I got that.
And then I have a poem coming out, and if you guys know Spuyten Duyvil, and they're in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
That press is doing a book of mine. What's the title? Oh, the ABCs. So it's an alphabet poem. It goes A to Z, and then it goes Z. No, then it goes A, Z, B, Y, and it goes on like that. And it's what's it about? It's about everything, And so then I got another a selected poems next year called what's it called? Round Your Tongue is my selected poems, 1959 to 2021, 62 years. And that's a heavy number, and so I mean I just today visiting the ashes of the great Jack Hirschman. I had my hands on his thing. That's one of my heroes. Is it, another poet like Clark, who was not that many years older than me, but he was a great man. He was Jim Morrison's teacher, by the way, at UCLA. And he died 87. And then on Saturday, I'm in a tribute to Michael McClure at UC Berkeley. He died at 88, another great beat poet. And I'm going to get up there and say, 60 years ago, I read the new book, A Book of Torture, the Ode to Jackson Pollock, and a poem to Thelonious Monk, and his great peyote poems. And here I am, 76. And, in my sense, I don't care about celebrity. I don't give a fuck about money. And I'm doing just fine. I mean, that's just the truth. I don't care about, and I got to know all these poets. That's enough for me. I met Kowski when I was 15, and he said to me one day, he said, how come you were my friend? And then I became famous and suddenly you're a hanger-on. I don't understand it. And he didn't succumb. He did a movie, but he couldn't stand the Hollywood people he met. He liked Sean Penn, and that was about it. 35 years ago, I'm driving down to Los Angeles, and I said, I'm going to meet an Asian doctor and live with him the rest of my life. And the next day I met him, and we've been together for 35 years. And that's part of my blessing. I feel life has always been good. Even the deaths I managed to resolve my deaths. My father died. He was a hobo in the Depression for 5 years. And he had a bookstore and art gallery in San Bernardino. And I learned from him about the money thing. You know, he was a complete, without being a communist, he was a complete anti-capitalist. He had tropical cancer in the window of the bookstore when they were closing down bookstores. And I loved that. And he died without a penny, but he always gave the guys on the street. The little penny he did have went to bums on the street. I mean, I'm not saying, I mean, he was like a Lamed Vovnik in Hebrew. We say the righteous who don't know that they're righteous, you know, because in a sense, you're up against, you were talking, Zack, you're up against so much. If you don't make money, you're a failure. You know what I mean? And even poets. So then I was lucky with that too, because I got a hold of the Bancroft one day. I sat down and I made a list of things that I own, my manuscripts and stuff, and I sent it to UC Berkeley. It had about 700 typos in it. And I called the guy up and I said, I don't know what I was doing. I pressed the button by mistake. And he said, no, he said, we'd love to have you. You know, you have to get this cleaned up. And I said, yeah, but I'm not Allen Ginsberg or Gary Snyder. He said, no, but you're a nexus. So I said, you mean like Sexus, Plexus, and Nexus? That's the Rosy Crucifixion by Henry Miller. And he laughed. And so I've made my money selling every 5 years. I sell to the Bancroft. So it's happened twice. It's happened the third time. And it was funny. They came over last time. They said, we'll offer you X amount or X amount, two different figures. And I said, well, I'll take the top figure. And I got the top. I mean, it was so crazy, you know. So now I'm putting it together again, and I'm obsessed with it. Archive. And it's archive. You know, somebody asked me on the airplane, what do you do for a living? And I said, I move paper. And I wouldn't tell him any more than that, the son of a bitch. I mean, you know, everybody, you get on the plane, you're supposed to reveal it. I move paper. I take my paper from San Francisco and I move it to UC Berkeley and the Bancroft Library. And the fact that they have it in cardboard boxes makes me sick. They're supposed to catalog, but maybe someday they'll get around to it. Maybe I'm talking too much, but that's how I feel blessed. I feel like life has been wonderful. I know I'm never going to sell, like, you know, the young lady that did the thing on, I'm obsessed with this. She did the thing for the inauguration. She now signed a deal with S.D. Lauder. That doesn't make me want to do anything but vomit. It has nothing to do with poetry. Right. It has nothing. I just heard her on television say, who thought that a little thin black girl could grow up to make a deal with S.D. Lauder and think about running for president? Oh God, fuck, that's wonderful, you know. But for me, it just doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, it's just a different.
The same thing you mentioned Bukowski. So I was cursed by writing a biography of Bukowski. He was my drinking buddy in the 60s. We spent night after night after night together. And we talk about Hemingway and Thomas Wolfe, and we drank Miller's High Life, and we go out for greasy fried chicken, you know. And I am convinced that if he had died eating 5-cent candy bars in some cheap room in LA, he would have been just as satisfied as he became a great world figure. I mean, he is a great world figure. And I told him the best thing he ever wrote was the dedication to septuagenarian stew, because it says for Neeli Cherkovski. Of course, I wasn't joking, you know. I wasn't joking. Somebody asked me, were you competitive with Bukowski? I said, yeah, in a way. I'm competitive in a way with everybody. But finally, I learned to accept myself, and I think so much better of people now. And that some of that comes with age. My books are all small press, except for the biographies I've done. Ferlinghetti, Bukowski, they've all been small press, and I just don't need to do anything else. I'm not into selling prophecy. I'm not into selling that stuff. You know, it's not saleable. I'd rather give it away, and then the Bancroft comes along, they take care of that. So I can do this for nothing, because I write for the Brooklyn Rail. You know, and I like doing that. That's a whole big new opening for me. And they have my poems. We do what do you call it? Video thing. What are they called? They're called Zoom. Like right now, we've done a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
Zoom. So
Podcast.
that's something I'm doing now, and I keep writing these poems, and I just finished an 85-page one, and I feel good. I feel like I have tapped in to the rhythm of what it means to
You
be
have.
and slash humane, without being a pompous ass, because that's the trick of that in as far as I'm concerned. I don't need to wear the white robes. I mean, my hero was Mr. Natural of R. Crumb,
Right.
and the robes in the desert, and all that. So
Hey, and that's what they call being aligned, I suppose.
yeah. So in my case, it all came to me. I didn't really work for it at all. It just came to me when I started writing poetry. I knew I would someday get there. And when I mean get there to it, I'd be satisfied with what I wasn't satisfied.
I remember
Years.
feeling that way when I was younger, and I've been contacting it recently and feeling like, wow, that's still me, and I've distanced myself so far away from that. I need to get back into it. Thanks for the reminder.
Well, Robert Frost said, you would not find me changed from him you knew, only more sure of all I thought was true.
Hmm.
Now, in my case, at age 12, I had some sayings of the Buddha, the Pali text. I had Bertrand Russell's Why I'm Not a Christian. I had a beautiful book called Platero y Yo by
Yeah,
Juan
that's
Ramon
great.
Jimenez,
It is.
about
Yeah,
the donkey and his love for the donkey.
so
And
good.
that's all I needed, basically and truly. That was all that was necessary. And then of course there's thousands, like you all have, you have libraries. You notice on TV, they all have libraries, and sometimes they put their own book. But my house is filled with books and they come every day in the mail. I just
Nice.
got Anne Waldman's great epic. She's a great, you mentioned Naropa. By the way, talking about Naropa, I wrote a thing years ago called Saropa, the Yak Karnak School for Wayward Boys and Disembodied Women. It was the Jack Kerouac School for disembodied poetics, and
Right.
and it was fun. It was very funny. I was upset because they never brought me there, and so I wrote a satire, and anyway, there's my story, sort of as it is.
Oh, thank you, Neely. Well, I remember going up to Naropa a few times. I've never spent a whole lot of time in Boulder. I've been in Denver for years and years, but I went and crashed Ginsberg's lecture in the summer program in 1992, I think, and I slept on the ground in the tent after everybody packed everything up. It was cold. But there's a whole world in Boulder that I don't know anything about. And apparently Niles Southern's up there trying to make a film about his father. I'm just moored here in Denver. I don't know the Boulder world. I should reach out to that.
Yeah, well, yeah. The poetry thing there is not as big as it was. The Naropa into
Oh, it's
Jack Kerouac School.
interesting.
Anne Waldman still runs it. She's a great poet.
Mhm.
I'm more confined to poetry. I'm more in, there's actually, I'll advertise, there's a film on me called, I forget the name. See, I'm forgetting everything. The name of my books. There's a film that Kyle Harvey did, and we had it in the Omaha Film Festival, and then the COVID came. So we're going to get that going more. Aside from the film and book that Clark and I did, then I got a memoir. So the memoir, I got a good chance with a very nice publisher in New York, and it's called Hyper, and it's all about growing up in LA and San Francisco.
Oh yeah, I bet that's
And
great.
it's got a lot of even that, so you can't escape the celebrity because I have to have these people in there and talk about them,
Because
and
they're surrounding you, yeah.
and then somehow I'll come out looking just fine, I think, so
I'll do my best to help you. I hope you like the review that I wrote.
oh man, I hope you go for it. I hope you think of Ray. I know I pestered you. I've been pestering him because he's thinking of some other place, and I like Rain
Well,
Taxi.
This is more freelance writing adventures. I wrote an article about Paul Williams, you know, the guy that started Crawdaddy, the first literary rock critic guy. I wrote an article about him, and I was waiting for his ex-wife to send me pictures, and that screwed up the timeline. And now the editor hopefully is going to write me tomorrow and say like, okay, we're running it, but I lost the track of it, you know? So I've
So
been
I
waiting-
do, but now I just
I'll
republished,
put your thing in Rain Taxi, I promise you.
I just republished the Bukowski biography that I did years ago. And that just came out. And
This is the one I got.
yeah, that's the older one.
Okay.
Okay, there was a one before that, and then there was that, and now that a new edition came out from Godine in Boston, and they sold the rights, and I'm getting more money from France than I got in the US. And Bukowski told me 45 years ago, someday you're going to make a lot of money off me, kid, you know. But I didn't make a lot of money off him. I made money off my own archive, my own papers. They wanted my papers. They wanted my poetry, my writing. I can't believe it. It's wonderful.
Pretty great.
It makes me feel so good.
So
And but again, they have it in boxes. They haven't cataloged it yet. So then I get a I redid the Ferlinghetti book I did in '79. And that is coming out in a couple of months. And it starts with it's now all you guys are talking about all these people, Southern and all. It starts out with I was sitting in the Cafe Trieste, and this guy said, "Are you from New York?" And I said, "No." He said, "You should be." And I said, "What's your name?" He said, "Jerry Rubin, Chicago Jerry Rubin." Now he knew all those people you're talking about, Terry Southern and all that shit.
Sure.
So I went home. He said, "What are you doing?" "I want to write a book on Ferlinghetti." He got on the phone to an agent. The agent said, "I love the idea." I went home and I took a couple tabs of Mr. Natural Acid, and I wrote the proposal on the acid, and I sent it in the next day. Probably would have taken me weeks. And they bought the book, and it kept me in cappuccino for years.
Excellent.
The Ferlinghetti book. So now it's coming out again, 35 years after I wrote it. It's just amazing. And he just died at
Yes.
101. And he's a very great man.
It's a long one.
Because he's a guy who he never franchised that store. And I can't tell you guys how often he was offered. He
Sure.
turned down money for awards he got. He turned down, I forget exactly what it was. He turned it down. He paid his people at the store today and in the past a lot more than the minimum wage. He took care of everybody, and he was the most commonplace great man. This man was on a landing craft at Normandy. He was at Nagasaki 45 days after the thing. He's the guy they put on trial for Ginsberg's Howl in '56, but he was the most open-hearted, on the street person you'd ever meet. With me and my generation, we're all 35, 40 years younger than him. He read with us, he dined with us, we had Thanksgiving. And I gotta say, Ginsberg was pretty much that way, although he had a very big ego. That got in the way of that, but he was very much that way. So were the other beats, and Bukowski was very much that way. He pretended not to be. He wasn't the madman that you often hear about at all. He was a very kind and giving.
My impression.
I mean, he could be an asshole in personal stuff, but he was pretty kind and giving, you know. Anyway, okay, I talk.
Thank
So
you.
Neeli,
So-
I'd love to read or see that the film with you and Coolidge. I've been to
Okay,
his.
the book also. Give Zack your mailing address and all that, okay?
Yeah, I filmed him before because
You filmed
I-
Mark?
in his library, and then him playing the drums. And
Oh,
I
fuck.
love
God,
he's
the
great.
drum, that's his big. You got it, kiddo. You got it. That's a drum. That's his big thing, right?
Yeah, no,
He's a musician before he's a poet.
Sure.
He's 83, and he's so great. Oh, that's so wonderful. I'll tell him. I'll see him Saturday. He's reading with me.
okay, yeah. So
Oh,
I'm Jeffrey Young's goddaughter. So Jeffrey Young is a poet. He's a language poet too, and
language poet.
yeah. So
You know Charles Bernstein?
I don't know Charles Bernstein.
Okay, he's the one I know of the language poets. Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I
okay.
mean, this documentary isn't about language poets. It's about my godfather. But there's an episode in it
Young,
where
I know, yeah, Jeffrey Young, yeah.
yeah. So
You're the
he and
goddaughter of
Coolidge
Jeffrey, yeah.
are just shooting the
Clark
shit.
knew him
And
well, right?
yeah, no, they've been friends for a long time because when Clark lived in Otis, Massachusetts, Jeff lives in Massachusetts too. So yeah, I mean, he was so great, and I had him actually read Henry Miller chapter about Jeffrey's dad, this guy Lafayette Young, because he has such a great voice. His CDs on jazz, I don't know if you've heard those. You heard This Is Jazz?
Yeah, but how about Susan Coolidge? Did you meet her?
Yeah, she made us dinner.
Because she and I call all the time, complaining, talking, gossiping,
Yeah, no,
wonderful,
she's very cool.
wonderful. Oh,
But yeah, basically now that Flint is done, I'm finally editing this little doc on Jeff Young.
so you'll give me all your information. Give it all to Zack, and then we'll. Okay.
Yeah, I'd love
Yeah,
to. I
I'll
can't wait
pass
to
them
read your
on.
books.
So Mark, you're up kind of late. I feel like we haven't been letting you speak.
That's all right. I'm fine listening tonight.
You're enjoying yourself, all right?
Sure.
That's good.
Yep.
I want to recommend Mark to Neeli. I know Neeli really appreciates writing. I want to recommend Neeli to Mark. I want to recommend you guys to each other. You both share.
Get your
quality-
emails. Get me the emails, and now, okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I did
You both-
read Neely's biography of the when the Bukowski came out a long time ago.
First one, yeah.
Yeah, I did read that, and I just wanted to toss in that I wrote a bunch of articles for Nexus, the Henry Miller Journal.
Wow! Oh shit! Wonderful.
Yeah, that because I'm a Miller guy from way back. But actually, do you remember Emil White, his good buddy in Big Sur?
Oh, I met him.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah, he was really getting up there in age. He was at the library at the Henry Miller Memorial Library.
What was your favorite Miller book? Since you're a Miller, who?
Mine, I went through his. In fact, I was just telling someone the other day. It's really weird, how he has really cooled off in the general talk about writers these days. He's like, in fact, he would be canceled. Let's be honest. He would be canceled.
Yeah, absolutely right.
He would be canceled. But my favorites were Sexus and Tropic of Capricorn, actually. I always thought Tropic of Cancer was a lesser book. That's my opinion,
I like Capricorn better too.
Listen, I'm not. I want to say, you can say, "Oh, Neely's saying this because exactly where I am." Exactly. It's rosy crucifixion, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Tropic of Cancer was never my cup of tea. And
Right.
Capricorn with the Cosmodemonic Telegraph Company.
That was really, that was a great.
However, I also wonder what you there's another small book of his I like, The Devil in Paradise, about Conrad Moricon, right?
Moricon, yeah. And I'm an astrology person, so that really that book particularly appealed to me. But maybe my very in retrospect now, and maybe because I'm getting to be old. One of my favorite, I think maybe my favorite piece of writing of Miller's now is the essay called Mother China and the World Beyond, which appears in that sextet. It's a very late.
I never read it. I got to get that. Okay, I'll get it.
And it's about about going to Devachan when you die, and he met his mother, who he hated all of his life. You didn't read that.
No, I have to admit I did not. No.
Okay, you should check it. It's really
But
very
think
moving.
What you said about him being neglected, it makes it there's nothing I can do about it. It makes me sick.
Yeah,
kids should be reading. Yeah. They should be reading. I'll tell you something Bukowski said.
Oh, hi. About Henry Miller.
Hey.
Very unfair thing Bukowski said, I like him somewhat, but he preached too much.
Yeah.
He didn't like the philosophy stuff. And I don't like that.
Right.
I like the Colossus of Morosi is another one.
Right.
It's a great book.
Right. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well,
yeah,
I mean,
one day Bukowski and I went to his house in the Palisades,
Yeah, I went there too, actually.
We knocked on the door and we heard a voice coming, and he ran to the car and ducked under the he ducked down, and then
Yeah.
I came to the car, so I ran there too, but you locked the door, but finally he opened it and I got I don't know whether the door opened, but we were afraid. He was afraid to meet him because he
That's
had
funny.
allegedly said some nice things about Bukowski, but I
Right.
don't know if that was true,
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah, that's funny. Yeah, well, I went up to his place on 888 Ocampo Drive in Pacific Palisades. That's the,
Right, that's it.
but he was already dead. But I just wanted to take a look at the house, and I said, "Wow, that my great idol was a complete bourgeois, rich guy." You know, but I guess the tax man tells you got to buy a house. So
What are you gonna do? Same
Right.
thing
Yeah,
with
that kind of
Bukowski.
happens.
Well,
Yeah.
I have to go because I have to put my son to bed, but I just wanted
hi,
to
guy.
say
how old is your son?
Sydney.
How old is your?
Sydney will
How-
be 3 in October.
That's the easy.
Night, Sydney.
That's the easy stage.
Good. Yeah. Well, we've passed the terrible twos, which is good.
Yeah, well, no, that's all. When you get to about 13, you're in trouble.
Okay.
That's people don't realize. I always tell people that, when you're in that really young, that's easy stuff. But when they start realizing you're not God, that's when the trouble
Oh,
starts.
shit.
Yeah. Well,
13.
talking about the new younger generations, I think that it's interesting that Miller is kind of like in the background right now because of politics, political correctness, but he's definitely not fading away, and it's only gonna swing in another direction.
Yeah, I
Where
think so.
Yeah.
new generations will always discover him,
Right.
and so he'll come back.
That's
into the
probably true.
spotlight.
Yeah.
'Cause
It-
I mean,
Yeah.
he's not going to go anywhere,
Yeah.
even though he's he would be canceled today, which that just kind of opens a whole other can of worms. But it's time for bedtime stories and songs. But really nice to meet you all.
Thanks for joining us, Nadia.
Good luck with everything. Good luck with all of your problems.
Thank you. I hope to get your contacts and
Okay.
Thank you.
have a good evening.
All right, good night. Thank you.
When I
Sydney.
think Neely, when I think of San Francisco, one of my great people think I'm nuts, but one of my great discoveries was made in the the bookstore,
City Lights.
City Lights. I was in there one day rummaging around, and I found Mohammed Murabit, the
Oh,
guy.
yeah.
Very much so, yeah. Both
I
of them.
ended up really just loving that guy. And I found him in City Lights, as a matter of fact. And Miller had a blurb on one of his short novels. So that's what I think of when I think
want to
of.
recommend Look and Move On. Has either of you read?
That's a good one too. Yeah, yeah.
So
Say it
good.
again.
They're all good. Yeah, some of them
Oh,
are
yeah.
better than others. But,
Look and Move On, I really dug because it's his trips to America and he's
Yeah.
interacting with
Yeah.
Tennessee Williams and
right.
you
I
get
actually-
that culture blend.
I actually was planning on going to Morocco this past summer, but the COVID just like fucked everything
sure.
up. It just has stopped everything dead. You
Yeah.
know, I basically haven't been out of the house for a year and a half, I guess.
Yeah,
So,
because you're in New York
yeah, it's a mess. You
and
know?
that's a hot spot.
Well, it's not now. It's not now, but
Oh, good.
yeah, I mean, but New York there are always problems, of a different
Yeah.
sort.
Guys, I'm tired, so I'm gonna have to. I'm worn out finally, but happy.
Oh, well, thanks for coming, Neely. I will send you the addresses.
Both these great people. I want to. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's good talking to you. Good. I'm glad we got to say hello.
Yes, and I hope I didn't. I mean, I listened for a long time, right? I was good. I was.
Oh, you were great. You were great. And let me recommend Mark's writing to you, Neely. I think that you share a quality of satisfaction. It's like eating a meal when you read one of your poems, when you read one of Mark's stories. It's just full of richness and what you want out of a book,
And Neely's Bukowski biography was really, I think, for a lot of people, the first like touchstone into Bukowski's life. I think I think that had a very wide sort of,
For a while, yeah.
yeah. Well, it's still around. I still see it around. So,
All right,
course.
guys.
yeah.
All
Okay.
right, good night, Neely.
All right. That leaves you and I to talk about whatever.
Yes.
So, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I figured I'd let them talk and, tonight.
Yeah,
So,
it was an entertaining,
it's
thing to
entertaining.
listen
Yeah.
to, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
I'm glad,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. But and I basically don't have. It's very strange for myself right now. It's been really this past year and a half has been. There's not much going on. It's
Hmm.
like this is the first period of time when I have not spent a good part of the year in France for
Oh.
obvious reasons.
Travel ban.
Nothing has. I haven't had a book come out in almost 2 years now, and it's
Oh.
not because for various reasons. I had a book that was supposed to come out in Germany in November. That's now postponed because the translator couldn't get the thing done. Now I don't know when it's coming out, and a book that was supposed to come out in France looks like it's going to be next year. So it's just been really, frankly, I've been very depressed, to be honest with you. Between you
I'm
and
sorry.
I've just been really bummed about all of the stuff, and it just sort of takes the wind out of your sails, like this whole. I don't know. It's been.
Well,
You like to get some stuff
I
out
can
there.
relate.
Yeah.
I've just come out of this pit. I mean, it's
Right.
not like it's been a long lasting one, but it was just like the
Right.
last 3 days were just really bad.
Yeah. No, I understand. That. I've had haven't uncharacteristically sort of bad shit lately.
Yeah, knock it off, fate.
Yeah. Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
I feel like it's okay sometimes to have that happen. I'm
Mhm.
not like warring against that it happened, but I'm hoping that it's stopped, and this
Right.
podcast was very uplifting
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and encouraging.
That's good. That's good.
And it sort of came at the end of a day of like a whole lot of self-talking and like getting
Mhm.
myself into the right place. So like
Right.
I feel like everything's good now. I
Right.
hope you're feeling good in
Well,
general.
yeah. I mean, yeah.
Soon,
Well,
too.
listen, I look at it as it could always be a lot worse. You know what I mean? So, I
That's
mean,
true.
if you're still on this side of the grass, you know what I mean? If you don't have COVID, if you don't have cancer, you can still, you're still doing okay. But
Yeah, and
um,
just finding things to appreciate. Like that would
exactly.
suck if
Yeah.
that wasn't there. I'm glad that it's there. Just starting small and building
Yeah,
up.
absolutely. Sometimes that's just the way. I mean, that's all there is. You know what I mean? Um, but what was I was going to say something else and I blanked out on it. But um, I, I was going to say, unlike Neely, a lot of times I feel more bewildered about life than I do great about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, me
Some
too.
days are good, some days are good, and other days most of the time I'm bewildered, you know.
I
So
have to say I'm much the same. And I'm always ready to feel good, but then if
yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah,
opportunity to
yeah.
feel bad, I might easily fall in.
Well, it sounds like you have a lot of good stuff going on that you're doing, though. I mean, you're
Oh,
between reviews and you're keeping busy. You know what I mean?
and
So
that seems like the thing to do, right? I mean,
you
if
have to.
you
You
sit
have to.
still and you worry, then you're just going to be in there
Right.
and
Right.
work, and you might as well just keep busy and get things
Absolutely.
done
Try.
right.
Yeah. Sometimes.
You'll
And
get
sometimes.
tired in a while, and you'll be too tired to worry anymore.
Exactly. Sometimes stuff works out well, and other times it doesn't. What are you gonna, you got to sort of roll with what's happening, right?
That's right. That's
Um,
right. And I'm glad for those little Easter eggs when things do work out. I'm glad
absolutely.
I got that email from that magazine, when I was
Yeah,
feeling
yeah,
like, oh,
yeah.
there's nothing for me. And then, oh, email.
Right, right,
Gotta
right.
stop,
Yeah.
recognize those things.
I always sometimes, and it's very, for me, it's very easy to forget. But I've always found that when I have a Zen like, when I really lock into that Zen like indifference to life, it
Excellent.
things come towards you.
Oh, that's excellent advice, Mark. Thank you.
But it's hard to achieve that. You really have to hit your like bottom levels of disappointment and dejection, and then you say, yes, I give in. You've beat,
You're right.
you know what I mean? You've
Yeah,
beat
that's what clues you into that state, I feel.
exactly. I carry the way of life is my religious track. That's the one I read it periodically. I used to read it every year, but now it's been a little. But I just, and it's so manageable because it's so small. You know what I mean?
That's the Tao.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's so small, and you can read the whole thing in one night, and you have all these great nuggets in there. Basically, it's like, it's be indifferent to life and just go with the flow, and you know what I mean?
I like it. I like
Yep.
it.
And it's really, to me, it's always been the most common sense philosophical / religious track there is.
Oh, that's always good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's,
like
you know,
possible not to relate to. Like, well, that's true. Yeah.
exactly, 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 exactly. And it's a really simple, I mean, it's a real simple method if you can lock into it. But that's the hard part, because
Yeah.
we're always trying to do striving, and rather than just surrendering to something, to accepting life. That's the hard thing to do.
And it's sort of, I mean, my trip lately is alignment, right? And that shouldn't
Right.
be an effort. It's more like relaxing into, it's
Well,
exactly
it's the same.
relaxing into life.
It's, it's the same thing. It's really
Yeah.
the same thing using a different word.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
I like it. I like it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's always little word combinations that clue me into understandings. I don't know if it's practice or it's inherent, but just all the words in my mind.
right, right. I just you started to ask me about the poetry before I talked to
Oh,
Nadia.
yeah.
That came about Martin Appleby. Do you know him? I don't know who he. I mean, I
I
just
think
had
I've
very
heard the
random.
name.
He just wrote me one day and said, "Do I want to do this?" And I said, "Okay." And I sent him a bunch. It's the run is so limited that I
30
I
copies.
totally forgot it was coming out. So it's like, I think he used a dozen poems. I think he used.
Oh, wow.
And it's very small, and it's a very limited run. But poetry, I don't think people move that many copies of it as it is. I mean, it's a tough go.
And
So
I'm hoping people are getting more minimal in their word intake
mhm,
so that they'll be more charmed by, flash fiction and poetry.
right,
I feel
right.
like it's going that way, but it's probably still not a big seller.
Nah, and I don't consider myself a poet at all. It's something that I just do randomly
It's
when
like shorthand.
yeah, it's just, yeah. Usually I find that sometimes I wake up in the morning, and I find them to be like sort of almost philosophical ruminations rather than the
Mm,
the act of the professional poet. You know what I mean?
right.
That's not what it is for me. It's like a you have some insight about something. That's it. You know what I mean?
I'm similar. Yeah, I just put together a chapbook. It's in submission right now. I think it's pretty good. We'll see how
Right,
it goes.
right,
And my vocation is prose, but I do some of that shorthand
right,
proselytizing myself
right, right.
a little.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
proselytizing, philosophizing.
Yeah, well,
Insights.
the markets, I mean, if you go into the professional writer mode, to me, the markets these days are really not good.
I
You know,
know, I know what
for
you mean.
people like us, it's we're like out of fashion in a way too. The stuff that's I go into bookstores now, and I'm like completely bewildered by what I'm saying.
I want to establish my own meritocracy. I want to like have a little stable of great writers and
Yeah,
little
yeah,
crowd that reads those writers. And I mean,
right,
to repopularize good writing, but
right.
probably beyond my
It's
ability.
a, it's a, I think I think it's very tough right now. Very, very difficult. I mean, it's just the mark. I mean, I speak every once in a while to my editor at my former editor, I should say, at HarperCollins. And like, I feel like I'm living on a different planet than the people that they're using, that they
Yeah.
contracts, so, um, if it was for me, if it wasn't for Europe, I'd be dead as a writer. I always say that.
I
If it-
tried to bring that in when Cherkovski was talking
yeah,
about the German publisher. I was going to be like, oh, Mark can tell us about foreign pub,
right,
but he
right.
just kept going.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was worth it.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's fine. No, I mean, without Europe, I would absolutely be dead as a writer. I can't get anything going in the US at all. And in fact, I've given up on it. I've given up on it. So,
Yeah,
uh,
I know what you mean. I was talking to this guy in San Francisco, an old man who used to hang out with the Pizza Cafe
mhm,
named Diamond Dave Whitaker, apparently very well known in San Francisco.
mhm, mhm,
And he was asking me what's the poetry scene like in Denver, and I told him something about how everyone's getting really political, like every poem
mhm.
has to be a political statement.
Right, right.
Nothing wrong with that, but it's like, where's the art? That's what I got into it for. So I'm sort of feel like an odd man out in that sense
Yeah, yeah.
with like
I've
the
al-
trends.
I've all that's for me, that's a real issue these days. I've always been either apolitical or actually anti-political.
I know.
It's
It's
just
hard. I mean,
that's
sometimes
me.
it gets in and it angers you and you end up writing about Trump or something, but like
Right.
that's not the poem that you really want to share.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
you
No,
haven't beaten anything with that.
it's not
But
my, you know,
I don't
but
want to I don't want to be too precious about it. It's just yeah, it's just my taste.
right, right.
Visual
Yeah, no, I've
aesthetic
just,
taste.
well, I actually, you remember Isaac Bashevis Singer? You remember him?
Yeah,
The
the
Yiddish writer.
chosen.
He always used to say, and I agree with him. Politics has absolutely no place in art.
I really don't think it does.
I don't. That's my
But
feeling
then
too.
there's this chorus of like, oh, but you can't be irresponsible and you can't
No,
ignore
I
it.
know. I know. Well,
But
I was saying to someone, we were talking the other day about how you're in the current like dialogue among people, between people, among people, you have to like take a stand one way or the other, and if you don't, you get in trouble too. If
it
you
seems
if
that
you
way
decide
more
you're
and
not,
more.
yeah, yeah, you get in trouble if you don't speak, say something about issues, and so there's no winning. There's no winning.
Yeah, it's rough. I don't
So
know. That's why I want to write fiction. I was going to just start writing all fiction, and then that
right.
Trump guy got elected. I ended up writing 3 books about my life, just dealing with the idea of Trump, and it's
Well,
some
well,
of them are pretty
well,
good,
here,
but
here you go. Here you go. Trump's gone. Now look at what we got. I mean,
ah,
that's my view. Like someone said to me, oh, the other day, Biden, you don't even know Biden's there. I said, are you fucking kidding me? Every time I go to the gas pump in the grocery store, all I see is Biden. Those prices are through the roof. You know,
uh,
you know,
that's the point.
I mean, I think it's bad. I mean, this is no improvement. This is
Yeah,
no improvement in any way, the way I see
I
it.
feel like politics is a standstill disguised as progress.
Exactly. Well, what too, though, and in defense of everybody, that's a politic. All of these things are no-win propositions. You,
And
you
they
know what I mean?
don't even know it. They think they can win. And
That
maybe
all
they're
of them,
right even, but oh, what a game.
none of them, all of these issues are no. I mean, there's always going to be eternal squabbling over everything and arguing between the sides. Carl Jung, the great, Swiss psychoanalyst, once
Sure.
said, and I always remember it, I love it, is that all of mankind's problems are fundamentally insoluble. And I always try to remember that.
Oh, that's true, isn't it?
I think
Wow.
it is. I think it is. Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah. So, but yeah, no, I was in the, there aren't many bookstores left in New York.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean it's weird. I think
that's a
every other
shame.
place in yeah, it's very odd because they can't afford, the rents are so staggeringly high
Mhm.
that they can't afford to be. But there's one place called McNally Jackson. It's got one branch in Soho and one down at South Street Seaport. And I was in the one in the Seaport the other day, and I walk in and I look at the desk, the table where they're advertising all of the new books,
All
and
right.
they're every single one is gender politics. Like
Yeah, that's a big thing.
I saw one that said the title was called Non-Binary. That's the name of the book. Non-binary. So I mean, looking at these titles and I'm like, wow, this is really, I mean, it's dominating sales, I guess, in books.
Yeah.
I go upstairs and the guy running the place, and I'm not making any value judgment about this at all. This is, so don't misinterpret this, but the guy upstairs running the top flight of the bookstores wearing a dress with ballet slippers, and it's just and I was like, I'm feeling like I'm from another planet these
That's
days.
pretty extreme.
Well, it's a really extreme in New York.
Yeah.
Very, very extreme. And again, that's not, you know what it is? It's the politicization of it that makes it in your face. And
Really, yeah, it
I mean,
does.
I don't really care. Who cares what anybody does? Obviously, you don't, who cares? But it's the politicization of all of these things that when it gets really strident and loud, that it becomes wearying, I would say.
I've never liked popular things,
Yeah, exactly.
When it's on every billboard, it's like
Exactly.
obviously not the thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not a value judgment here either.
No, I hear you. But it is the kind of thing that my contrarian instincts come out when I'm getting bombarded with something. I think that's kind of what I'm saying. When I'm getting,
it feels like a deliberate overhaul, and
exactly.
you're
Exactly.
like, wait a minute, I'm not part of the masses. What are you trying to do here? But
Exactly right.
but you're like afraid to say anything.
Oh, you
because
can't say anything. Yeah.
Sound like someone's going to misinterpret or
You exactly.
offensive.
No question about
something.
that. No question about that. We always talk about, I got a lot of actor friends still around here, and we were always talking about that, and they, nobody feels comfortable saying anything anymore because you don't know where, what you're going to say that's wrong or do that's wrong, and then think that's wrong too. So it's interesting time.
We'll be okay though. We can do it.
Yeah. Well, we have to, right?
We have to, and it can't be that hard, or we wouldn't be here having to do it.
Exactly.
We'll just do it.
What always brings me back to earth personally is I watch, I've raised some dogs for the Seeing Eye, the blind organization, and I love those dogs. And they just like, when you deal with them, you sort of get reduced to the basic sort of.
Oh, that's very good.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's your Zen.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. They're just great animals, and you just sort of, everything else goes out the window for the time you're interacting with the dogs. So,
that's right.
Yeah, I actually just got through watching one for a woman who was actually, this dog is actually a fully fledged guide dog, and for a blind woman, and she went out to Las Vegas and Death Valley, and it was too hot to take the dog. So temperature, so she decided to leave him, and I had him for a week. He was a great, great dog. Dawson, his name was. German Shepherd, you know. So, but yeah, they sort of ground me in a different reality, you know, a sort of a
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad
Yeah.
you've got a go-to for that.
yeah, it's a good, it really is. It's a really, you know, so yeah. And in fact, not that you, I lately, this is very, and I think I can't figure out if this is partially this pandemic thing or what, but I usually have no trouble finishing my books. And I've got a couple of novels that I've stopped halfway through, very uncharacteristically. I'm having trouble concentrating, and
Wow.
yeah, it's weird. Like that stuff never happens to me, and it's sort of like I've stopped halfway through a couple of books, and I find my interest in reading has waned. It's, you know, like again, I don't know if it's like partially, you know, what's going on. I don't know. It's just something that's going on that's, you know, thrown me out of my zone. So
I hope it passes.
yeah, I hope so too. So yeah.
No.
So what are you, what else do you have to work a job these days, or?
What I've been doing is leading groups on
Okay.
various esoteric subjects, and I'm between groups right now. I'm about to try to lead a group on the UAP, the relationship of channeling to spirituality
Interesting.
in light of the recent UAP verification thing, which might draw some people in. And I got a suggestion to lead a group on creativity, which is like the most basic, just how do you look at life creatively, you know?
Right.
And that's nothing I've ever done before, but I feel like, wow, I could probably do that pretty well.
Do you do that? Do you do it under the auspices of a university or privately? Like,
You know, my father used to be a divine science minister.
oh, okay.
He's
Okay.
dead for several years, but there's a church that he used to be the minister of, and it's changed its name to Althea Center for Engaged Spirituality,
Interesting.
which is an ironic Larry Flint connection because he had the wife Althea,
Right.
and I didn't bring it up when Nadia was here, but
Hmm.
they've let me teach a class or lead a group so far on intuition, inspiration, and chaos, and one on writing about your supernatural journey. Not many people showed up, but they paid well, and hopefully no one's complained. I'm hoping that I've got, you know, a message pending from them in the next couple days to get a new group going.
I'll tell you what's interesting is that if I was in Denver, I'd come. That's
cool. I'd love to have you guest.
That I mean, I would just come and sit in on your, because that's the kind of thing that interests me. I go to the Rubin Museum here sometimes, you know, which is all, you know, is spiritually based. I don't know if you know of it.
No, I don't think I've heard of it.
Mandalas
Rubin Museum.
will be the new thing for the next next month. They're doing a whole program on. That's where I got to look at the Jung Red Book.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
The real thing.
yeah, very interesting.
Wow.
But anyway, yeah. So no, that sounds very interesting to me. I would, and it just one thing that pops into mind is I've always wanted to write a novel about a psychic.
Oh my God.
Well, that's one of the ones that stopped 160 pages in right now.
Really?
Yeah. And I had the outline and everything, but I can't get something about the plot to work in the second half, and I'm really frustrated by it. But I've always there are some novels, classic pieces of literature that I love that had to do with the subject, and I've always wanted to do it, and now that I wrote half of it, I can't finish it, which is really bizarre, but that's a whole different story, you know. But what you were saying touched off the thought. So
that's very interesting because I have just written a partial biography of my friend who's a medium.
Oh,
and
really?
channel, and
Oh,
it
no.
was also a book about meeting this incredible woman who was a medium and a channel, and realizing it's not going to be romantic, it's going to be spiritual. And I'm meeting this person because I have a lesson to learn, and I have like
Oh, that's
work to
really,
do,
that,
big fucking spiritual work to do. And that's the book that I just finished.
wow,
And
that's,
there's this whole unsaid thing that didn't come up in the podcast, but go ahead.
that's really interesting because my novel is about a medium channeler.
Excellent.
Well, and it has to do with some criminal thing that happens, and then, and I can't get the second half of the book to work. It's,
Wow.
I don't know. Maybe it'll straighten out.
And it's times like this where you wonder, like, are we playing in the same field somewhere up above our realities and like dealing with the same? I mean, there was
Oh,
no
absolutely.
criminal
No, we
thing in
are.
mind that I know of, but
We are. So your book is it finished?
it's finished. And it's this crazy thing, man, because I fell in love with this person. And then I realized, oh, she's got a boyfriend. I can't do this. But I'm still like totally drawn to this person. And it must be important that I follow. And so I've like followed her through all this time and just waiting for her to respond to this book. And I keep sending her parts of the book. And then after like months and months, I realized, okay, I've just got to write this book. And it's not her writing the book. I'm writing the book. I've got to write this book. So I finished the book. And then she was leading, co-hosting a course called Aligned Up Level. And I thought, I'll take this course. I paid $60 for this 3-day course in embodying alignment. And now I'm paying $371 a month for her to be my coach. But it also involves a group thing. And that's the thing that I was talking about earlier, where I had this meltdown in my manifestation group the other day, because everyone else was sort of just enhancing their good vibes. And I was more like, no, I got to find my way out of this self-created hell. I didn't say those words, but that was my attitude. And the unspoken thing of it is like we were supposed to meet on the 16th to talk about the book after all these months. And after I had that meltdown, she sent me an email today. Oh, I'm not going to be ready to talk about the book on the 16th. And I had already spent like all these hours just recalibrating from the meltdown. And then I had to, go through that again.
Interesting.
So I'm going to edit this podcast severely before I post it anywhere. But thanks for listening.
Oh no, I'm fascinated by it. Wait a minute. Are you posting this podcast?
Well, I'm going to edit it severely.
Okay.
So there won't be any embarrassment from me, and there won't. And our whole conversation about the ballerina slippers, I'll edit that too, because Neely's gay, and we don't want to offend Neely.
It's funny. I didn't realize that about him. I didn't. I
was so worried about talking to him when I found out he was gay, because not that I'm homophobic, but just like, what's it going to be like? And then when I talked to him on the phone, it was just easy right away. He's
no. I was kind of, the thought never entered my mind. It just doesn't, what's a typical gay guy? Who knows? I mean, but
that's part of the weird indoctrination too, it seems like. I mean, like, I don't know what it's like to be gay, but there were gay people that I knew that they weren't like performing. I don't know.
What I was saying, off the record here, if you, I wouldn't want this in, but I could tell you.
I'll do it. I'll add it.
A couple of really interesting medium stories that I have. This woman that flew really way under the radar, from Florida. Well, she lived in Florida, but she came up and she would do private readings. and she did this fascinating reading on me, and it was one of the weirdest experiences I've ever had. This is a woman, middle-aged woman, and we sat in a room, and as the reading, she spoke in a normal voice, and then when the reading started, like she would crack her hands, and you would hear this electricity, just like
Uh,
it was really then, and she regressed into a voice, like this ancient voice, which was really, I, like an archaic voice, and then she would tell me things about past lives, which was really, you know, um, about this crime I committed in a past life
uh,
that has been haunting me, and it was really, really fascinating experience. And then another very interesting time was be I always wanted to get a, a reading by a Vedic astrologer,
right.
and I sat down with this guy, and he proceeded to he was he started reading, he read my palm, and then he looked at my chart, and the guy was just so deadly accurate about my past. And this was at a time when I'd been struggling for decades trying to get my writing out. And he looked at my palm and he said, "Oh," he goes, you were going to be a famous person, and you live after a certain point in 2 countries for the rest of your life." This was a decade before this whole thing
Uh,
with France started. And I've been spending, significant parts of every year there,
and
where
are you known in France? You're
well,
pretty well known.
let's put it this way. I'm reviewed by like Rolling Stone in France, and
Pretty good.
yeah, Le Figaro, they're big, I get
Uh,
reviewed, but there I get reviewed by national newspapers and
yeah.
magazines, and I'm on TV all the time too.
Oh, wow.
And here it's really weird because here nobody has any clue who I am. It's very,
Really? Yeah.
yeah, it's very, very odd. But he was dead on about like everything. It was really fascinating. It's just really interesting. Two very interesting experiences. But the whole mantic art thing has always totally fascinated me from a very early age.
Yeah.
And I just wish I could get this book to work. So
Well, boy,
I don't know if I'll be able to do it, but you know,
if I end up teaching that supernatural writing class
yeah,
or leading that group, I'll invite you to guest.
I would love to do it. Yeah, seriously, if I was in Denver, I would love to come to your actual classes.
Thanks for saying so. I appreciate the
Yeah, no, I would.
encouragement.
It would interest me. It would really interest me.
Right on.
But
Yeah, it's the newest thing I never thought to do before, I mean, I've tried teaching writing and like usual sort of utilitarian things,
right.
but I never tried talking about spirituality before. It's going really well so far. I mean, it's just beginning, but it's a good thing to try doing.
It's interesting too. I think that in many ways we're living in a really a a spiritual time, anti-spiritual time.
It's true, yeah.
I think of another great I think of him because I love the guy so much. In fact, I made a pilgrimage to his place in Switzerland just a couple of years ago. But Hermann Hesse has faded
Oh,
so far out of consciousness too.
you're right, yeah.
He's like he wouldn't be canceled, but I see people actually laughing at him, they
Yeah.
make fun of like, oh, that's whole, mystical tradition of literature, and I took it very seriously, of course, but
My
he's
favorite is Knopp.
that's a very
Knopp,
good, yeah, yeah,
that's my
that's a great one, yeah. I just read a very early one that was very interesting about um what the hell was the name of it? I can't remember the name of it. Slim novel. It's been reissued, and it's one of his very early ones, and it's about a guy who flees to Italy from Germany because he wants to kill his wife and children. He wants to murder them. And he goes and he meets this woman in Italy. It's really fascinating. But all of his stuff was great. You know, when you look at his work, I mean, the writing, the quality of writing was like spectacular. You don't find writers like that anymore. I don't think. You just don't find them, you know? In my opinion.
Well,
Anyway.
the language has evolved and it's become more sort of pedestrian,
Yes.
prosaic.
Yeah, absolutely. But the concerns of like the spiritual world and, you know, like this other
That
existence.
makes, I want to ask you a question because I've always had the spiritual viewpoint,
Right.
outlook. But
Right.
when I wanted to be a writer, I thought, well, the world doesn't like that. So I'm going to have to tell stories that bring it out without quite saying
Right.
that.
Right.
That came up the other day in the abundance group. I was realizing that. Do you
Mhm.
have a similar, did you have a similar becoming?
That's a really good question, and I don't know that I have a ready answer for it.
Thanks.
I think a lot. I don't have a good, you know, it's a great question. And I'm not sure I have a good answer for it without giving it some thought.
Just one of those little weird personality things that you
Yeah.
leave behind and forget about. And I was
Right.
just remembering that the other day and thinking,
Yeah.
wow, that's probably
Right.
had some results, you know,
Mhm.
without me noticing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I would say that a lot of my own work has been suffused with despair, and people that read it might superficially conclude that I am not a spiritual being, and they would be very mistaken
I
about that.
was surprised when I found out you were into Vedanta, into Vedic astrology, rather.
Yeah, yeah. So it's I sometimes don't talk. Well, I reference it here and there, but I don't really go into great detail about it. It's sort of more personal, almost, you know.
Yeah, I've always felt the same way. And lately I'm starting to think like, but maybe it's a power that I've
Mhm.
just not let myself
Yeah,
access. I
right.
mean, it's
Right.
all brand new, but
Mhm.
I'm in this rediscovering the spirit kind of thing
Mhm.
lately.
Mhm. Mhm. I totally understand what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah. But
All right, Mark.
okay, we should probably wrap. What time is it? Yeah, we should.
It's
Yeah, we should wrap it
my
up.
time, it's 9:07. I guess it's like 11:07 your time.
11:08.
Wow.
You're close.
Well, thanks for coming over.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. And maybe someday I'd like to take a look at that book. You know, the book that you were talking about, the
All
spiritual.
right, I can send you some excerpts.
That would be great. Yeah. And
Right
if
on.
you have it, if you can remember, you know, I totally it slipped my mind. The book that the one that I have the poem in. I'd love to get a hold of that.
Oh yeah, I'll send you a copy.
Okay, you have my
It's
address.
the cool zone. I think I do. It's still Montclair.
Yeah, if you need it again, just drop me a note and I'll
All
send.
right.
But as always, I'm always willing to, you know, participate. It's my social life here now. You know what I mean?
I got it. Thanks a lot, Mark, and I'll send
Absolutely.
you a link once I've edited everything out.
Fantastic. Zach, good talking to you.
Same here. Have a good
And
rest of the night.
and good luck with everything.
You too. Thanks.
Feel good.
All right. You
Okay,
too.
buddy. Okay. Take
So
care.
long, Mark.
All right. Good night.